Welcome back, dear viewers. You're still watching The Breakfast Show live on Nile TV International. It's now time for our press review segment for today. And we're most delighted to be joined in the studio by our guest, Mrs. Eissa, and she's an international law expert. First of all, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. And dear viewers, we kick off today's press review segment from Nile News, where we read President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi attends a session entitled Social Media, Saving or Enslaving Users. The World Youth Forum 2018 continued on Monday in the city of Sharm el-Sheikh with a number of sessions. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi attended a session entitled Social Media, Saving or Enslaving Users. President el-Sisi said that social media must be used in a positive way and must not affect the security and stability of countries, stressing that there is a use of rumors in a large way. The president said that during the session, there were two teams. One spoke about positive points of the social media, and the other spoke about the negative points. Sama, if you could tell us how do you see this session?
First of all, when it comes to social media, we have to come to an agreement that it's a double-edged sword. Like you said in your article, they talked about the positive things and the negative things. So we need to know that with everyone recently bashing the social media, how it's a platform for spreading rumors because it's like a mask and people do not know what the source is. So there's a lack of credibility and there's very easy access to spread whatever it is you find in your way.
Yes.
However, think about the word of news in the 70s. Now the world is like a small village. If something happened in India, 5 minutes, everyone in Cairo have the capacity to learn about it.
Yes.
So that's why it's a double-edged sword. For what President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi talking for the youth, mainly it's not going to change the reality of the social media. But from our side, what can be done is spreading awareness. Awareness for checking the source of the news. Even they tell you when you read a book, Google or search the biography of the author so we can know his inclination.
Yes.
So I think if we are trying to contain social media, we'll be like China, an oppressive country. And this contradicts our idea of democracy we're trying to launch here in Egypt. So I think a perfect scenario is a high awareness in regards of social media and the youth who circulate sometimes, excuse my language, nonsense. And they actually exert a lot of energy in believing in them. So you fight an ideology with another ideology of awareness.
Yes. And moving on to Al-Ahram Al-Arabi, where we read President el-Sisi attends a session entitled How Do We Build Future Leaders? President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi attended on Monday a session entitled How Do We Build Future Leaders in the World Youth Forum 2018, which is held in the city of Sharm el-Sheikh. During the session, President el-Sisi urged to establish a city for Africa's youth, not only to allow African youth to participate in international conferences in Egypt, but also to receive and communicate with the African youth throughout the year and qualify them if necessary. The president said this will be among the recommendations of the World Youth Forum 2018. President Sisi also said that the National Academy for Training and Qualifying Youth aims to test youth and qualify them to become leaders of the future. This is about youth. The president is concerned about the empowerment of youth.
Which makes perfect sense because they are the future. If you focus on the youth, you guarantee a stable future because they are the coming generation. So we're trying to save what's coming next. It's like a very long-term plan when you focus on the youth. And when it comes to the word leader, like over history, you have President Sadat. He was a leader. And you have Stalin and Hitler. Still, they were called leader. But this one led their nation to peace and stability, and the others doomed them to wars and death. So we need to redefine the definition of the word leader. You know how they tell you there's a difference between a boss and a leader?
Yes.
And a leader leads by example. And also integrating youth from Africa. This is going to create a union between Egyptians and other youth from different nationalities, so we all have the common and same understanding. So I think we need to go back to the root definition of the word leader with the youth and integrating whatever comes from them. What I love about these youth things that they're open discussion and they leave room for interaction. So you can integrate what they give you and what you can add up to them. It's like a learning process.
Yes, indeed. And moving on to the Shurut newspaper, where we read President Abdel Fattah Sisi attends a presentation on education in the World Youth Forum 2018. President Abdel Fattah Sisi said on Monday that Egypt needs about 250,000 classes with a cost of 130 billion pounds to reach with the density to 40 students per class. During a presentation on education in the World Youth Forum 2018, the president also said that Egyptians have to change their idea regarding graduates of vocational education. During the presentation, Minister of Education and Vocational Education, Dr. Tariq Shawki, and Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, Dr. Khaled Abdel Ghaffar, reviewed in a joint presentation the development of education in Egypt and its role in building future leaders. Sam, I believe it's a challenge. It's a major challenge for Egypt, the education.
The highlight of this news, actually, it's the part where it comes to the statistical part, where President Sisi was very honest, and it made headlines recently. I'm seeing it on social media, being said this amount of money, that what it takes,
130 billion, yes.
which is massive. That's just like a realistic perspective. That is what it takes to have these classrooms stand alone. So this in itself gives people sense of reality, what it takes to empower education. So I'm like, we have to appreciate the president's honesty for telling us such a striking number, but it's like a wake-up call. It's not easy and it's not going to be done overnight. Whereas there are other priorities, like if you look at the hierarchical pyramids of what is necessity for people, a bunch of things can be said. And here comes education, requires massive amount of money. So I think this will help people like let it sink in and be realistic in their demands.
Yes. Moving to Al Ahram newspaper, where we read President Sisi attends the Arab African Summit simulation model, and President Sisi attended the Arab African Summit the simulation model in the World Youth Forum 2018, which is held in the coastal city of Sharm el-Sheikh. President Sisi expressed his appreciation for the efforts exerted by the participants in the simulation model. The president urged the actual officials to benefit from the discussions, the working papers, and the final statement that has been issued. President Sisi also urged to send the recommendation of the Arab African Summit simulation model to the Arab League and the African Union, as well as the Egyptian Foreign Ministry as a concerned party, to prepare for Egypt's leadership of the African Union next year. For their part, the participant youth stressed the need to put programs that make Africa united in all fields and bring harmony among the cultural diversity in the continent. If you can tell us, how do you see this model, and to what extent it can help youth to be future politicians and entrepreneurs?
What I really love about this simulation idea, whether it's the African Union or what they do with the MUN, the model of the United Nations, because the idea of the simulation, it brings individual youth and they put their self in the shoes of other nations. So by default, they have to have the mindset as if they are someone else. So this gives us compassion, and it widens the youth horizon to think outside of themselves and their own surrounding, and they start to understand what it feels to be the other nation. And what they say about the recommendation and the thing that's been done, we do not know for sure if it's going to be manifested afterwards in a serious pattern, but at least it's a good brainstorming idea to help the youth to this idea, critical thinking. Because here in our nation, we've not been trained, the educational system, for this critical, analytical thinking. And this kind of simulation is going to be something that is going to start, let them be on the track of how to think analytically and critically, and having the president and what they right being taken to other institutions give them sense of encouragement.
Yes. And moving, dear viewers, to Al-Yawm Al-Saba, where we read President Abdel Fattah Sisi and Omani Foreign Minister, they met on Monday with the Omani Foreign Minister, Yusuf bin Alawi. During the meeting, the president praised the strong bilateral relations between the two countries, stressing the aspiration to strengthen those relations in various fields. For his part, Oman's foreign minister praised the Egyptian-Omani relations, stressing his country's keenness to boost bilateral relations and joint cooperation. How do you see this meeting?
Just there's something I like to highlight about Amman. They have very good history with Egypt. Back then when we signed the Camp David Treaty with Israel and all the Arab nations boycott Egypt, Amman did not. So we have very good ties that go way back then, and they are good friends with the nation itself, disregarding who is in charge or in power as like personal presidents. No, it's like the country itself, they have good ties with Egypt. And I think it's a very smart move because both countries, us and Oman, need an economic boost. And a common investment will have a lot of benefits. Create job opportunities, foreign investments, so any joint forces that creates a win-win situation is a smart move. So I think this has very high potential, like in theory. So let's hope for the implementation
yes,
too. Yes,
indeed. And still with اليوم السابع, dear viewers, where we read Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli attends China International Import Expo. Was attended on Monday by the Prime Minister in the inauguration of the first China International Import Expo in the Chinese city of Shanghai. During his speech in the opening ceremony, the Prime Minister pointed out that Egypt's participation in the expo provides a real opportunity to enhance the joint cooperation between Egypt and China in trade and investment fields. The Prime Minister said that the past 4 years have witnessed a great boost in the Egyptian-Chinese relations at the bilateral and regional levels. Dr. Mustafa Madbouli said that the economic cooperation between Egypt and China is a fundamental pillar in the joint cooperation between the two countries. A boost in the ties between two countries, as the Prime Minister has noted.
And also China now is so fragile, and such an easy target to have ties and cooperation with, especially at this point with what Trump and the administration of the United States is doing and pressuring them economically. So it's a weak point for them and they need any allies. And it's a very good opportunity for Egypt to step in and try to do
exploit the situation.
Exactly. So it's a smart move and I think we can take it to our advantage.
Indeed. And moving to Al Shuruk newspaper, where we read Egypt's foreign exchange reserves rise to 44.5 billion. The Central Bank of Egypt announced on Monday that the foreign exchange reserves rose to $44.5 billion by the end of October 2018, compared to 44.45 in September 2018, with a rise of $42 million. Egypt has adopted a comprehensive economic reform program to encourage investments, decrease budget deficit, and achieve higher growth rates. In 2016, the Central Bank of Egypt decided to liberalize the Egyptian pound exchange rate as it announced a number of reforms aimed to alleviate a dollar shortage and stabilize the country's economy. Just very briefly, do you feel that the economic reform program and the economic situation in the country is on the right track?
Very honestly, in theory and in paperwork it is, but my concern is carrying through implementation. We are the best country to have laws and reform. The enforcement part is the issue. So I hope we carry on the enforcement as planned.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but we really do appreciate your insight. Sama Eissa, international law expert, thank you so much for being with us on The Breakfast Show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And dear viewers, by this, we wrap up the press review segment for today. A short break, and we'll be back to resume the remaining segments of The Breakfast Show live on Nile TV International.